Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk. We're back again with you guys for another show for the second episode of the new series looking at how Arsenal are being linked to all these different players across Europe, across the world in fact. And what I'm doing for you guys is giving you that tactical breakdown, that really good insight and in-depth look at these different players and what we should expect from them and what sort of influence they might have on the Arsenal team. Now, today, and what's been going on with this week really has been the I wouldn't say huge news, because to some fans it's not really taken us by any sort of awe or excitement, but it's one of those signings in which, or double signings is what we're going to talk about, of which is necessary. They are filling gaps in the squad, and we're actually spending quite a lot of money to do it. Now, obviously, I'm talking about the links to Praet and Joachim Andersen, these two players that are coming from Sampdoria. The reportedly Arsenal are going to be in for 48 million euros for this. I mean, the Samp president wants 50 million euros, and we're going slightly under. It's so strange, isn't it, seeing Arsenal do that? It's completely out of character. But basically, in the last episode where we looked at Ferran Torres and we looked in depth at my article on the Spaniard, today I've got the help of someone who's written a really, really fantastic article on this. Mahif Kamaj, this guy has written a really, really good article on both and what their impact are. It's written for Free Flow Football, which you can find the link for the article in the description. Please go check it out. It's extremely well written, extremely well thought out and done. And through reading that and looking into other sources, I'm going to give you a breakdown of both those players and what they're going to be like if they were to sign for Arsenal. Now, you may see me looking down at some notes because, believe it or not, I cannot hold all this information on my head at once, so bear with. But, I mean, we start off with the young Danish defender, Joachim Andersen. I mean, this guy is extremely young. He's 23 years old, and when you're in the Premier League and you're coming into a very physical league, you need someone of the ilk who's going to be able to deal with those challenges. Now, we've actually been linked alternatively to Getafe's Decodum Jenner, and now he is the complete opposite. He's very fast, he's very nimble, but he's very short. He's only about 5'9", 5'10", whereas Joachim Andersen here is 6'4". Very, very large, very good presence. But ironically, not a great player in terms of his aerial ability. He's not known for that. He's not known for getting up and winning headers. He's more known for being actually really, really good on the ball. You don't necessarily associate these really big, tall players with that. You more think of them being the big aerial threat. But in fact, Andersen is more of the player to bring the ball out from the back, do more with the ball at his feet, and actually play some really fantastic passes out to his teammates and obviously get them on the move. And we're going to see that if he was to sign. You can see from the graphic there, he plays it out wide, he plays it for the centre. If you remember when we had Per Mertesacker and Mikel Arteta as sort of the linchpin in that, and they linked with each other so well trying to get the play started, Andersen's really good at finding that pivot midfielder very accurately and very consistently and moving the ball forwards. He does have his weaknesses, as any player does, and as a young player you can only expect that from someone. So moving to the Premier League, you'd expect them to get those main weaknesses out of his game. But the main weakness for him is the fact he's very, let's say, gun-ho. He's very much, when he sees an opportunity, he wants to go in for a challenge. He wants to win that ball. He wants to get the ball back as quickly as possible for his team and try and restart the play with his excellent passing moves. Problem with that is that he often sees himself getting out of position. And if he's out of position, it leaves the club vulnerable. And Sampdoria was caught out many, many times from players being able to play passes through the gap that had been previously vacated by Andersen, and they play that pass through the gap in the defence and they're through on goal. And the lack of him being there means that they're really, really vulnerable in those. And we don't need that sort of immaturity at Arsenal. We need someone to come in who's established, who's strong, who's going to marshal that defence and do a really, really good job for us. If Andersen is that guy and can be coached and can be improved, then maybe we'll see a really, really fantastic signing. Who knows? But if it doesn't happen, then there are worries that those immaturities and those inconsistencies in his game could cause Arsenal a few problems moving forward. Looking at the other player, Praet. Different type of player completely to Andersen, much shorter, sub 6 foot, midfielder. Sampdoria player, the diamond 4 in midfield, and usually he's occupying that right centre midfield slot in the diamond 4 in the 4-1-2-1-2 formation, if you like. Now, What's really good, and we'll start off with the positive about Dennis Praet. I mean, he's someone that's been thought of in the Belgian setup as someone who would come through and take the reins on. Unfortunately, because of the progression of Belgium's fantastic golden age of players and the likes of Torgan Hazard and other young and sprightly players, Tielemans and whatnot, we've got this guy, Dennis Praet, now, who's sort of been under out of the limelight and more in the shadow of these players. And it's actually allowed him to sort of develop more quietly, hasn't been able to see the same sort of hype around him. And it's quite interesting, in fact, to see us linked with Dennis Praet at this time. He actually received a trial from Arsenal when he was a lot younger. He was thought of quite lightweight by Arsene Wenger back in the day, but now he's definitely worked on the physicality. If you watch him play in Serie A, he's much more physical, wins the ball back, supports his fullback, and if we know anything about Hector Bellerin, we know the guy loves to get forward. So to know that you've got that security, if he was to play in that similar position on the right-hand side, we usually play in that midfield too, with the attacking midfielder in front of him and then the two wide players if we want to play 4-2-3-1. But even if you play 4-3-3, it's usually with a holding and someone sitting with two midfielders in front of them. He can occupy that right-handed slot with Torreira in behind. You've got Guendouzi there, you could have Xhaka there if he doesn't leave. And he would provide a lot of what Ramsey did. I'm not saying he's anywhere near as good as Ramsey, because he isn't, but we definitely need to be going out and looking for someone to bring in some of the abilities that Ramsey provide us, because we've got a huge chasm of quality leaving with him going to Juventus. And maybe Dennis Praet can be that guy to come in and start, I don't use the words papering over the cracks, but it's certainly sort of coming across that way, that he would come in with his abilities which don't necessarily stack up to the same level as Ramsey. But for the money that we're able to spend on these types of players, it is a very, very good amount of money that we could spend on the likes of Dennis Praet to come and do that job. In fact, talking about how good defensively he is, he actually had the same amount of interceptions as both Xhaka per 90 minutes and Torreira last season. So it shows you the effectiveness that he has, and he actually, obviously, of course, brings a lot more going forwards. He likes to play the passes through, he likes to be in with the play, winning the ball back in the final third as much as possible and trying to get them on the counter-attack and really taking advantage of those positions in which Sampdoria got themselves into last season. So when you look at everything sort of together, is this double deal really that, well, positive for Arsenal? I think it's positive that we sort of get this deal done as soon as possible if it is going to happen, so they get integrated into the squad as early as possible. It's good to have that connection with themselves, coming from the same club, of course, and they're joining their former teammate in Lucas Torreira. You've got that link. We also used to talk about, didn't we, how we had a lot of German contingent in the squad or a French contingent, but there's nothing wrong with bringing in players from the same club and seeing them succeed. You've seen what's happened with Liverpool and how their relationship with Southampton, and bring in the likes of Van Dijk and Lallana and Mane and more of these players, and Lovren, Klein, so many of these players that came from the same club and have grown and developed and been so successful for them. There's no reason why bringing in players like from a club like Sampdoria, who are extremely full of quality. Sampdoria are not only ones to turn their nose at, they're a good Italian side, could have arguably done even better this season, and it's unfortunate they didn't. But and now what we're seeing is their players are going to be moving on because they know they're a level higher than what they're at. Arsenal is certainly a level higher than Sampdoria, and we know that, and so hopefully we can exercise our right as a more attractive club to get these guys in. I'm not saying that you have to be fully excited about us not bringing in this world-class talent, but ultimately we need to be savvy, we need to be street smart with our signings, and we need to be industrial with them. And bringing in these two guys to join their former teammate Torreira to form a good link and a good structure and a good spine through our team can only be positive for the club. In terms of looking at alternatives, you're really limited because we don't have Champions League football. It's a really massive issue for us that we don't have Champions League football this season. I think a lot of people underestimated how much of an impact it would have had. So if you wanted to go out and get someone like Sarabia or Fabian from Napoli, who personally would have been my perfect choice to replace Ramsey, you're not going to be able to do that. Fabian's at a club in Napoli where they've already got Champions League football. So you're not going to see someone like him come in, even though he probably was the best guy for the job. But we are going to have to deal with that fact. We are going to have to deal with, we're going to have to take the level step down and develop and coach these players and try and hopefully create a better team that can take the club forward so we can get Champions League football next season and then improve the squad even more with more quality players. And so that pretty much rounds off where I want to talk about it. There are two very competent players that I think could come in and improve and do a really good job for us. They're not going to take the world by storm. I'm not saying they will, but this season we need to be savvy with with our money. Hopefully we can reinvest some of our money by selling some players. We can bring in some youth, bring in some experience as well, and hopefully we'll see Unai Emery starting to create a team around players like Dennis Praet and Joachim Andersen that can really push this team forward, and players that are going to improve, which these two most certainly are, players that have a ceiling which is much higher than maybe some of the players that we already have at the club. So I hope the deal does go through, does happen, because I think they'll bring a lot to this Arsenal side. So that pretty much rounds things off. Last thing to talk about is, if you haven't already checked it out, I'm not going to put the link in the description for this because I'm doing a video that's going to come out tomorrow, which will include the link. But if you want to get ahead of the game, my recent article on Gabriel Martinelli, the new Brazilian guy, 18 years old nearly, and he's supposedly joining Arsenal, about £5-6 million, and he's going to be this guy that's going to come in and take the world by storm. The media called him a striker. And if you might watch and you read through the article, you'll find out maybe that's a little bit far wide of the truth. So please go on the Gooner Talk Twitter account at the Gooner Talk TV. Have a look at the article. It's the pinned tweet, and get yourself ready for the video that's going to come out tomorrow for you guys on Gabriel Martinelli, in the same sort of ilk as the last two videos you've seen here, and you'll get all up to date and on the insight with the player. I hope you've enjoyed the show. If you have, please give it a like. Please subscribe if you're new around here, and leave a comment. Tell me what you think about the possible signings of Dennis Praet and Joachim Andersen, and let us know if you're enjoying the show. Please do. It's been my pleasure. As always, up the Arsenal.